So right now in the NFL, there is a lot of focus on the contracts or the upcoming contracts of guys like Jordan Love, Tua Tagovailoa, potentially Dak Prescott. And earlier today, Dan Orlovsky on the Pat McAfee show on ESPN shared some thoughts when it came to Tua Tagovailoa and his contract situation with the Miami Dolphins.
And so, the conversation starts above what Trevor got. And then the Tua one is fascinating. The Tua one's interesting to me because I think if you're the Dolphins, you sit there and go, it hasn't gotten done. Why? Why has that deal not gotten done yet? It's one of two things. Either that they believe it's more because of Mike McDaniel than Tua, or two, that only because he's only played one full season. And so is it a lack of performance or belief that the performance is sustainable, or the health? That's the only – because it's unquestionably the best season that they've had at that position in 25 years. Best – not even close. He threw for 4,700 yards. So to not get that deal done yet, you're sitting there going, well, what's the hesitation from the Dolphins side? And if you're Tua and the numbers even remotely close to what Trevor got, why would you not run and take it, considering 18 months ago we saw that season in 22 where multiple times got taken off the field because of head injury.
Yeah.
So Dan brings up an interesting point. The deal hasn't been done yet. So what could be holding that up? And I think that, the two things he brought up, Tua's health, which he was healthy last season pretty much for the most part. And before that, he had some questions when it came to the head injury. And I feel like that's a little different injury than, let's say, someone, pulling a hamstring or doing something like that. Because with one more head injury, it can really, derail your season and or your career potentially. And if you've already had a few bad ones, I know that the more concussions you have, I've heard it, can get worse and worse. And so that if you're the Dolphins and you're having to make this decision that involves hundreds of millions of dollars, and if you decide to pay it to a $56 million per year on a 4 or 5 year deal, and a lot of that is guaranteed, you are putting yourself in a position to where you're banking on him staying healthy. And of course, with any quarterback, there's always, any NFL player for that matter, there's always going to be a risk of injury. But with Tua, even though he had a good season last season, I believe he's going to have a healthy season going forward. But if you're, having to make a decision with hundreds of millions of dollars, and you have a guy that had a problem with head injuries a year prior, I would bet that the Dolphins are a little hesitant when it comes to the guaranteed money, and that they want to give way less guaranteed money than Tua thinks he deserves at this point. And so I get from the Dolphins' perspective why, just from the health-wise, why they would be a little hesitant to give him that kind of money. Let me show you one other clip, and then I'll touch on Tua's play a little bit versus playoff teams, which I think is interesting to note. Let me find the timestamp here, and here we go.
And so I don't think there's 5 guys in the league that can play in Mike McDaniel's offense the way that Tua does. But there is evidence that coaches that come from this system,
agreed,
that they have a little bit more of an idea who's behind number 2 and or door number 3, more so than other places. For me, this would be a no-brainer. I would sign Tua. I think Tua's play has warranted that. But that's why my question was why has it not gotten done? It's either they believe that there is another option quarterback-wise, or they're still scared of health stuff.
So Dan is saying that he doesn't think there's 5 quarterbacks better than Tua for this Mike McDaniel offense, which may be true. He brought up a little earlier as well, when you have these, Kyle Shanahan, Mike McDaniel type offenses, they may be, more prepared when it comes to bringing in a second guy because of the way their scheme's set up, where it's so quarterback friendly. And you look at Tua, having Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, there's no doubt it's a very, very good situation, similar to Brock Purdy in San Francisco. And I don't think you can take away from a guy who, in the situation they're in, played really well. But at the same time, it could be that the Dolphins, when they're having to figure out how much to pay Tua, there has to be a number where they're like, that's a little too much to pay Tua, when they think maybe there could be another option. The issue is when you have a quarterback playing at a level that gets you to the playoffs, I think it's hard to move off of him if you don't have a sure answer to come and replace a guy like Tua. And maybe in 2025, there's some free agents who could come in and, you could pay cheaper who you think could maybe play just as well as Tua. That's a possibility. But when you look at Tua, the thing I want to bring up is how he's played versus, and the Dolphins in general have played versus playoff teams last year. They were 1-5 versus playoff teams and 10-1 versus non-playoff teams. They averaged 17.7 points per game versus playoff teams and 37.1 points per game versus non-playoff teams. So it was a completely different team when they were playing lower tier talent, teams that did not make the playoffs, and then 1-5 versus playoff teams. And we saw that happen with them losing in the playoffs to the Kansas City Chiefs. It was not a great day by Tua. 20 of 39, 199 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. The offense only scored 7 points. And so, again, if you're having to pay a guy hundreds of millions of dollars and you've seen him be consistently worse against top-tier talent, that has to give you, a second of hesitation, because the goal here is to win a Super Bowl. We saw last year the Dolphins made the playoffs the past 2 seasons. But if you're going to get past guys like Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, you're going to need better play from Tua in those kind of situations. And so I wouldn't be shocked if the Dolphins were looking at that and saying, you're not worth this kind of money because, when you go up against these top-tier teams, you don't play at that level. And so we're not going to pay you as if you're that top-tier quarterback. Even though overall Tua's stats are up there really high because the victories against the non-playoff teams were so lopsided for the most part that it really pushed him up high. And he had a great season, but those are the things that would concern me a little bit about Tua Tagovailoa. And I don't think I would want to make him the highest paid QB in the NFL, especially with that injury history. I think that could be some of the things that the Dolphins are probably considering right now. But if you guys want more NFL content, feel free to subscribe down below. You can follow me on Twitter, LukeBeller3, and I'll see you guys next time.